Revolutionary greetings to all the distinguished guests, leaders, speakers, activists, and changemakers across the African continent, all protocol observed. My name is Melene Roussow and I'm from South Africa. I'm a gender and human rights activist, a lawyer by profession, and the founder of Women Lead Movement, an organization with a core objective to promote a more gender equal society. We currently have 2 offices, one in South Africa and one in Madagascar, and we would like to extend our reach across the continent in the years to come. For me, it is an immense honor and privilege to speak on this last day of what was a deeply insightful and reflective conference. But this conference left us with one mission, and one mission only, and that is to move forward with the grit, the guts, and the determination to drive the gender equality narrative and agenda across the length and breadth of Africa. We cannot stop until change is seen and felt, whether you live in the big cities or in rural communities on this continent. The UN Secretary General pointed out, accurately so, that gender inequality is perhaps the greatest human rights challenge we have ever seen. To deny half of the world's population and 52% of the African population rights, access, and opportunities is, in my opinion, the biggest travesty of justice on record today. For centuries, women and girls were subjected, defined, measured, and judged by social, cultural, and religious norms and standards rooted in patriarchy. And as we know, patriarchy is a system that was designed by men, for the benefit of men, and sadly upheld by both men and women. The implications of the patriarchal system meant that certain rights, responsibilities, power, and influence were allocated to both men and women respectively. And this, of course, perpetuated the oppression and the suppression of women and girls the world over, as well as the violation of their human rights. In Africa, progress has been painstakingly slow as it pertains to gender equality, and to a large extent it has been inconsistent. This is evident in terms of the gender parity reports by the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Report, as well as the report by McKinsey, a global institute on gender parity in Africa. According to McKinsey, it will take us 142 years to achieve gender equality in education, politics, health, and the economy. For North Africa, 153 years. For Sub-Saharan Africa, 135 years. So of course we have nothing to celebrate, as Africa still remains the continent that records the highest inequalities in the world. And this is just a brief overview, because these statistics were recorded at the beginning of 2020, before the COVID pandemic cut through our already fragile social, health, economic, and political systems. And women are obviously set back even further. And all the progress that we have made up until that point has almost been completely eroded. In education, for example, Africa is still the lowest region in the world when it comes to gender parity in education. In countries, for example, like Burkina Faso and Angola, it will take for them 100 years to at least achieve gender parity in education on secondary and tertiary levels. The political situation is also quite devastating, as only 25% of women are currently in political office on this continent. Though we have made progress, 6% and 3% respectively, women in parliaments and women as ministers, a lot of work still needs to be done to ensure that women are fully represented in political office. When it comes to the economy, specifically the informal sector, women make up 89.7% of people working in the informal sector. Fellow activists and leaders, I believe that we have reached a watershed moment in history. We have done enough stock-taking over the years. We are acutely aware of the challenges, the obstacles, and the threats in our way to achieve gender parity on the continent. The only question that remains, in my opinion, is how are we going to build back more equally? And I have a few suggestions that I hope that you would consider going forward. Firstly, we need to build and establish more women-led organizations that are robust, informed, and active. Now, these women-led organizations must lead the charge to challenge regressive and discriminatory laws, policies, and practices where it manifests. They need to hold governments accountable. They need to hold other institutions accountable for lack or slow gender transformation. We must continue to march, petition, mobilize, educate, and make submissions. And I hope that we will not grow weary in doing what needs to be done in order for us to achieve gender parity on this continent in our lifetime, because the future is now. Secondly, as noted by the UN Secretary General, women's equal leadership and representation is the game changer that we need. And I absolutely agree, because I often say, if they do not give you a seat at the table, you bring your own table or you build your own table. I believe that as women, we need to encourage and support more and more women to run for political office, whether at local government or at national government level. I believe that we also need to establish more women-led political organizations that will contest elections. I have absolutely no doubt that because of our massive constituency of 52% of the Africa's population, that we will see more and more women being elected into office. Women that I believe will be fierce defenders of our rights and interest. Thirdly, as organizations working in the gender equality space, we must ensure that we fight for sufficient resources in order for our organizations to be fully funded as well as capacitated to operate at optimal level. The easiest way for governments and for big business to destabilize our efforts is to ensure that we do not have the funding to do the work in the communities that will usher a new culture in society. A new culture where men and women accept and respect that all genders are equal and they have a right to equal access and opportunities. A new culture where men and women rise collectively against injustices. I would like to implore all organizations on this continent to start collaborating. Collaborate in your activities, collaborate in your finances, share human capital, share information. That will be the only way that we will be able to achieve our common goal. Fourthly, seeing that the future is now, what we will require is the formulation of socio-economic plans that have an intentional focus on women and girls. We must put our women and girls at the center of economies, as this will fundamentally drive better and more sustainable development outcomes for all people. And this is non-negotiable. Women must be present in decision-making, but more importantly, their voices, their lived experiences and their ideas must be incorporated into every decision made and every plan formulated. In conclusion, I would like to thank all the conveners of the Gender Equality Africa Conference for always leading with fierce determination in their mission to achieve gender equality on the continent in our lifetime. To organizations, activists and leaders in the gender equality space, we have an extremely challenging battle ahead of us because we need to change the toxic attitudes, mindsets and behaviors that have manifested gender inequality in society. We need to uproot social, cultural and religious norms and standards that have perpetuated the oppression of women for centuries. We need to challenge government. We need to challenge civil society. We need to challenge private sector for their lack of response as it pertains to promoting gender transformation on the continent. We can no longer pass the buck. I believe that all of us must take responsibility and we must be held accountable for the status quo. But I believe that we can only go up from here. To the leaders, rise in power because the future is now. Thank you.